This week we're taken into Isaiah chapter 6. And yes, I know we're rushing through it. We began last week with chapter 1 and now we jumped to chapter 6. So that's sad because we've left out a lot of chapters in between. Go back and read them and make sure you see the continuation on from 1 to 6. It's important that we read throughout the whole of the book. The Sabbath school can only give us glimpses into the book because we don't have all the time that we would really want to study the whole book in detail. So as we now look at chapter 6, as I say, don't forget what's gone before. This week, the title is Crisis of Leadership. Last week it was Crisis of Identity. Not sure whether I really agree with that. Now it certainly is a crisis of leadership, but a crisis all round because it's not just the leaders who are creating problems, it's all the people who are following them too. Everybody involved, it seems, are going the wrong way. The leaders go that way and everybody follows. And what ends up is a tragic situation. It's really so absolutely appalling that God's people would just give up, as it were, and just go off and do whatever they wanted, following other gods and just pleasing themselves. And God gives Isaiah this vision in chapter 6. It says that in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated in majesty on a high throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Directing the people back to God, and not just God, someone they can just forget about, but the Almighty God. This is a description of a majestic being. You read what it says. And Isaiah's response in verse 5, I'm doomed, I'm going to die because I'm a man of unclean lips and I live among a people of unclean lips. For I've seen the King, the Lord Almighty. The idea, if you've seen God, you're going to die. But God sends one of those angels, the seraphim, and touches Isaiah's mouth with a glowing coal from the altar and says, look, this has touched your lips, so now your guilt is taken away and your sin is forgiven. And that's when we have Isaiah's call, if you like. It wasn't a specific call directed to Isaiah. And this is interesting. He says, God, that is, who's going to go? Who's going to go and be my messenger? And Isaiah says, I'm here, send me. And God says, okay, go. And the interesting assignment is this. Go and tell these people, keep on listening but never understanding, keep on seeing but never comprehending, and so on. And it's as if God is intentionally wanting them not to respond. And of course, that's clearly not true, not from what we know about God. But God is basically saying, you seem to want to be stuck in your ways, that whatever I do, nothing is going to change. Well, okay, you have it your own way. I'm not going to force it. God never forces. God is a great believer in freedom. He's dedicated his universe to that principle. And he wants us to come to him because we want to, because we choose to do so, because we want to be healed, we want to understand, we want to see. See all these words here in this chapter. And then Isaiah said, well, how long is this going to go on for? How long is this rebellious tendency going to continue among the people who don't want to know? The ones that you said in chapter 1, I'm sick and tired of your sacrifices. And God says, well, until the towns are ruined and empty, houses are abandoned, and the land is devastated and destroyed, until the Lord sends the people far away and the country is totally deserted. Don't tell me that they didn't have warnings. God, time and time again, through Isaiah and the other prophets, tells them, you've got to change. And because he's a God who wants to even shock them into some kind of response, says, okay, I'm going to let this happen to you because that might be the only way that you will respond and come to me. Here we see tough love, if you want to call it that. It's God working in every way possible to get his people to respond. Whether the leaders are going wrong, whether the people are going wrong, doesn't really matter. It's just wrong. And in this crisis of leadership at that time, Isaiah is the voice of God calling the people and the leadership, come back to God. And that's a call that we all need to hear.